Hi, I'm Andrew Eiche, the CEO at Owlchemy Labs.
So Andrew, what are you showing here at GDC?
So at GDC, we're showing our hand tracking tech demo. It's basically showing off the cool technology. We've been working for 2 years on this particular type of hand tracking. So originally we did vacation simulator. We had this lovely hand tracking, but it was like mimicking controllers. This is a built from the ground up solution. So this is, how do you interact with the world when you have all 5 fingers and the discrete touches and everything of that world? So we get to do cool things like picking up a squeeze bottle and squeezing it, which, seems so simple, but you can't really do that. Or like having squirt guns where you're pulling the trigger and holding it, or, manipulating very small objects, which controllers were normally bad at. So we have like a coin in there and you can pick up the coin, and it's kind of all the exploration of what makes hand tracking great and the work that we've done to make great hand tracking.
Like, we should emphasize that for the viewer, that it's not just like, it's just, your hands in VR space. It's individual fingers and motion without any kind of adapter or sensor or anything extra.
Right, you just put on the headset, and this is the beauty of it, right? It's another barrier of friction removed, right? So before we had, before we had drill a bunch of holes in the wall, hang a bunch of lighthouses, and it worked beautifully and it was fun, but that's a lot. And then now we have, put on the headset, pick up the controllers. Well, now it's not even that. It's put on the headset and you're done. Your hands are there. And you get to use all 5 fingers. We have this very discrete tracking. And then our job is to take that and translate that into what does great interaction feel like? How does actually physically existing in the world work?
Now, talk about kind of the back-end work that you did working with the MetaQuest 2 and how you got it to work with the tracking. Because you said 2 years, that's a lot of development time.
Yeah, so, Meta has been working a lot on their hand tracking solution, and they've done a great job giving us the hands. That's what we take from them, is their position in space with all the fingers and everything. And then what we build on top of it is that interaction layer, right? And they released hand tracking 2, which is really cool. You can actually pass your hands over each other and some other things. But we build, we spent a long time thinking about how do you flip a switch? What if there's this concept where we stretch your hand a little bit here and there and you don't even notice it, but it's because you're pinching or poking in the air, we need to have a little flexibility in how we do it. So under the scenes, we kind of make your fingers a little longer or a little shorter, depending on, to make it feel like it snaps. We also built an entire system for how objects are gripped. So in Job Simulator and Vacation Simulator, we had this thing called tomato presence. Because when you have this big mitt and it's binary, you pick something up, a tomato, we would disappear your hand because the mental model is it's now tomato, right? You didn't need anything else. But now that we have these secondary interactions and you have all your fingers, the expectation is that you could see and do that. So we try to figure out all the ways that you're going to grab something like a coffee mug, through the handle, on the top, all those, all those different ways that you can hold it and then allow you to do that. And then there's some moving some stuff around to make you feel like it's exactly what you did, a little behind the scenes magic that we use. But overall, the goal there is to make it so that when you're interacting with the world, we're not giving you a series of gestures or hand. It's pick up the cup like you would pick it up.
Yeah.
Pour the thing like you would pour it, and then drink.
You guys are making a fortune off the peripherals.
Yeah.
Just blank coffee mugs and blank squirt bottles. I just put them right there around there and grab them.
Well, and so that's the interesting thing that we think is there's a future of hand tracking where, you could put any blank peripheral in. What's stopping someone from making a painting game where you just pick up a real paintbrush, right? And we look at it and we go, okay, we know where your hand is, we know where this brush is, and now you get to use the brush instead of trying to create an analogous situation with a controller, which is what we've been doing for a long time, is how do we make this thing that has, a bunch of discrete buttons and a track and a joystick, thumbstick or trackpad work like the real world? We actually just get to do it.
It's like you said before, it's VR has always been bulky and kind of clunky, in terms of hand control. So you could never type in a number on a telephone, for example.
Right.
It just would not work.
Right. And I mean, Job Simulator did that joke. That was the whole Job Simulator keyboard was, you can't type in a real keyboard, so it's just 1 and 0 and just big whap buttons. And in this demo, we actually had a real keyboard where you pinch each one of the letters. That's another thing that we found is really useful in VR, is what we call the self-haptic, right? So when you use a regular keyboard, the keyboard like physically pushes back against you. That's what happens when you stop with something. That's like, you know, a basic law of physics, right? Equal and opposite reaction. So you push down, you feel the key, it hits the bottom and it pushes back against you. That doesn't exist in air. And so just like trying to touch type in air is not gonna work. But if you pinch, your thumb pushes back against your fingers. And so you get this like self-haptic. Squirt bottle works the same way, because as you're squirting, you feel it touch the inside of your fingers and you get that self-haptic. And those feel great.
Now, has your company always been interested in like hand tracking in general? Because it's been a long road of gloves and sensors and other different things, third-party peripherals you would need to track the hand moves without controllers. But guess what I'm saying is like, why now? Was it the Meta Quest 2 hardware? Like, why these last 2 years?
We're interested in the things that make less friction for VR. Mm-hmm. We want VR to succeed. And what holds VR back many times is not visuals, mm-hmm. right? We know that because there are so many games with incredible visuals. And it's not, even now, it's not necessarily that the hardware isn't perfect or this or that. It is that there still is a barrier to how to get everything on. That you put a blindfold over somebody's face and then tell them specific buttons to push. That's a barrier to entry. And anything that takes that barrier away or makes you more connected, those are the kind of technologies we're interested in. So we've always had our eye on hand tracking, but once it started to reach the fidelity where we were like, okay, this is now useful. And so when we built the original vacation sim, what we do is Owlchemy Labs does like little R&D experiments. And so we went, and hand tracking had just come out in the Quest. So we're like, okay, we're gonna do this experiment. And the way we do these experiments is we finish the R&D thing and we ask ourselves the question, what more work do I need to do to get this to release? And we list it all out. And when we looked at it, it was a doable amount of work. We had assumed it was going to be like too many things or some technical thing that only Meta could solve and we would need to wait for them. We're like, no, we think we got it. And so we went through and we did all that. And then when we started to give demos of Vacation Sim with hand tracking, it was amazing because people who struggled to remember what button was teleport or what thing to turn would just pick it up instantly. And so then it was like, wait, maybe something's here. So then we did another R&D experiment where we were like, okay, what if we built something from the ground up from hand tracking? And at the end of that, we were like, we should build our next game as hand tracking from the ground up. That should be where this goes, because we now think that the technology has matured to the point where as we're building it, we're gonna meet the moment. We're gonna catch it right as the fidelity is there.
Now, I know MetaQuest is basically the most popular VR platform out there, certainly the most affordable, but what do things like, and this is going back a little bit of ways, but what do things like when the Valve Index makes a game, like what do you guys look at that and take away from that, if you take anything away from that when something like that happens?
I mean, you know, we are a multi-platform company.
Right.
So we're really looking at, like, we've always said, we will bring our games to wherever the technology can support them. And so that goes back to, like, it's not that we need XYZ hand tracking. We can do anybody's hand tracking, right? If the hand tracking can meet our minimum requirements. And the same went for, you know, Job Simulator released on 3 platforms, each one at launch, right? HTC Vive, the Oculus Touch, and the PSVR 1. And we always think in kind of those terms here. So when somebody releases something or this or that comes out, we evaluate the technology. We look at it to what the specific markers we're looking at with, like, is this reducing friction? Does this allow us to create the fun games that we create? And then we say, okay, it's a fit. We build that, and then we partner with the platforms that will allow us to still accomplish the goals that we set out to accomplish.
With and just because it's kind of relevant, the PS2 VR just kind of released. Like, what does that mean to you as a company when you see another new platform coming out?
We love new platforms coming out. I mean, all 3 of our games, Job Sim, Vacation Sim, and Cosmonious High came out in PSVR. We made a demo. Cosmonious hasn't had a demo, so PlayStation has the demo of Cosmonious High. And Yeah, we're super excited. We love seeing the success that they're having, and Sony is like near and dear to our hearts. So, and we gave the free upgrade too. Job Sim and Vacation Sim were a free upgrade if you had it on PlayStation VR 1. We, took more work than we thought it would, but we did it. We made it work. And so that's kind of like rising tide raises all ships. So we made sure we were day one with all our content on PSVR 2.
I feel like it's been a decade, 10 years of just wild westing it with the VR. Do you think we're close to like a standard, like a quality standard across all platforms?
I think
as a developer,
I think there's a lot of things that mean quality standards. I think the state we're in from developer side in VR is NES, right? We're building the Nintendo Entertainment System. And what I mean by that is when you look at the Nintendo Entertainment System, what you were handed was a bunch of chips on a board and a bunch of like code instructions to move it, right? That's like nothing, right? You had nothing. No one had invented the mouse or the window or those things. So the next evolution of VR, somebody's gonna have to figure out what Windows 3.1 in VR is and what eventually Windows 95 or OS X are, right? Those are the coming things. But remember, those are now a software evolution, not a hardware evolution. Right. So when I'm looking at kind of where we are in the cycle. Where we are right now is that most developers, when they get VR, they're given either a set of like pretty like boxed in, packages they can use that have like a limited set of interactions, or they're given the NES, which is like, you can do whatever you want, you just gotta get your hands real dirty. And that eventually that gap is going to close, and it's going to become easier for developers to start to make great content right out the gate.
And then when will the public be able to experience your hand tracking? When you have a set release date this year, next year?
We haven't announced anything yet. We're still working on it. When it's done, yeah, we want to make great games, and we wanted to start showing folks the hand tracking stuff without getting into like new game and stuff like that, because we felt that the hand tracking is a story in and of itself because of how cool and unique it is, that it deserves its own moment.
Now, the interesting thing is, will you go back and update Cosmonious High and your other games to have hand tracking with the new?
So we did do Vacation Simulator hand tracking. I think at the end of the day, we don't have plans to go back and update those because it's a pretty big difference in design, right? And those games are beloved. So, if we were to go back, we might be able to do something that like what we did with Vacation Sim, but there's no plan where we're going to go back and because that would be a complete re-architecture of the game to do that. So this is like the next steps is what we're looking at with the hand tracking stuff.